It was a cold, crisp, clear winter's night when I looked out of my window at home and saw the stars twinkling and the moonlit landscape. And then suddenly I saw a strange star that wasn't there before, and it became larger and larger and larger. And then I could just about make out that it was saucer-shaped. And as this saucer-shaped object became much clearer, I noticed it seemed to be controlled by something intelligent. It then hovered for a while before landing in my garden. I opened my kitchen door and went to investigate, terrified, wondering what it was. Then suddenly a door on this saucer-shaped object opened, and this rather hideous-looking creature got out. It came up to me and said, "Greetings, Earthling. I have travelled 60 billion light years. Could I use your toilet, please? Thank you."
Good evening and welcome to another exciting show. Please don't take that seriously, what's just happened. Hang on, Ben, you got your microphone off.
Yeah, that would be a bit shocking, I think, if an alien turned up and wanted to use my toilet. I think, well, what? No, well, I don't know about that, You're not going to do it.
Well, that's right. But the trouble is, he did warn me. He said, I'm on the salt. I said, the salt?
Wow.
So he went in there, and when he left, it's in a terrible state. So when I saw him again, I said, what do you leave my toilet? Poo all over the place. He said, I did tell you I was on the salts. He said, I'm on the summer salts. Sorry. Terrible one. Anyway, welcome to another exciting show with my guest, Ben Emlyn Jones. And started off, I'm sure that a lot of you know Ben. In fact, he hasn't been on for a long time. I don't know. You lost him. So he is
a while.
Fockham Hall Minister of what we say UFOs without portfolio. Did you lose your portfolio somewhere?
Yeah, that's a good suitable job title for me, I think. Yeah.
Yes, the Fockham Hall UFO investigator without a portfolio.
That's it. Yes. And without salary, unfortunately, either.
That's right. If you can get another one off of eBay, or someone can find it where you left it, you just. But anyway, very quickly before we start, I got a surprise through the post, which makes a change from nasty brown envelopes from those nasty tax people. I got this lovely card from Ted, and he knows I like cats, pussy cats. Yes, and he's wishing me a happy new year and a lovely contribution towards the program.
That's nice.
Ted, thanks, mate. It's much appreciated. And I sent an email thanking him, and thank you very much. It really is very moving. This was quite a surprise, actually, when it came through, because I don't know, it was one of those sort of, just after Christmas days. I think, there it is.
Oh, cool. I recognise a few names in the chat. Hatchie, DJ B2, Chris the Gardener. Hello, guys. How you doing? Nice to see you. Ralph Winter. Hello. I think we share a lot of viewers, I think, obviously.
We do. And we got Hatchie saying, evening, Ben, Chris and Ralph. Is Ralph here? From South Coast Rich. Looking forward to this one. That's right. And we've got DJ B2. Great to see Ben and Chris together again. Oh, that's good. Yes. Got Chris the Gardener. Yes, I'd be interested to know what drugs you take before you make these intros.
Caffeine, mostly. Just caffeine. Never alcohol or anything like that.
Well, I found these funny mushrooms in my garden. I don't know quite what.
Oh dear.
So I fry them up. Give them to my neighbour who's been sort of walking around with a strange trance.
Oh my God! Yeah. That might explain the toilet. That might explain the incontinent alien if you take it with the mushrooms.
Got Happy New Year, Chris from Ralph. And of course, we got the same similar greetings. And I know that Kat is in chat as well. And Kat said, "Hello, Chris. Looking forward to the show." I said, "So am I." You know, shall we sit back, Ben, and wait for the show?
Oh well, yeah. I mean,
So
it
here we go.
is good to be back on the show. Yeah, in this incredible year. I mean,
Yeah.
is this pace going to keep up? Because I mean, if this was a boxing match, you know, it'd be over before the first round. I mean, there's nowhere this. I mean, we're just outside the first week of 2024, and look, there's at least two major stories that are broken out. I mean, it's incredible.
Yes,
It's,
yes. I
it's
think I know the
unbelievable.
first one. I mean, that story is talking about that list that's been.
Mm.
And what got me was Stephen Hawking's, which
Yeah.
I don't believe at all. I think that's a
There's
red
been
herring.
loads of jokes about that. I'll tell you about
Yeah,
going on top and things like that. You know, but
yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's clear that I mean the list that was published. I mean, it's published in two batches. The first one was about 900 pages. The second one was 328 pages. And I mean the names, some of them. I mean, pretty much this is kind of what we conspiracy
yeah,
nutcases have been saying for years. And it's pretty much proved us right. And I think there's several things frustrating about this that really the actual FBI and the judiciary weren't actually going to do anything about this. It took a private lawsuit from Virginia Roberts Jeffrey. I think it's her third lawsuit against the Maxwell and Epstein. To actually, and only then now has the courts decided to release the list, which is basically like the Black Book. Do you remember the stories about the Black Book?
hmm,
Uh, it's it's pretty much what we expect. I mean, there are a number of names on there. Now, not all these people that are named are going to be guilty of anything. A lot of them are, for example, there's David Copperfield and Michael Jackson. Well, I think this is the equivalent of ordinary folk like us. If we might hire a local singer and we might and a conjurer to perform at a wedding. And this is like the rich version of that. Of course, Epstein, he gets the most expensive magician and singer he could find, which is Jackson and David Copperfield.
hmm,
Also, what I think is very interesting is his interest in science. Now, Epstein is known to have an interest in science, and this, I think, is why he wanted to spend time with Stephen Hawking. Hawking's not the only scientist he was actually interacting with. He also interacted with Kip Thorne and Alan Guth, who are also theoretical physicists. And there's a bit of a speculation on in some quarters about why that is. Whether some people have said, well, he's interested. I mean, it goes a bit far in some cases. People saying, well, obviously he wanted to travel in time or develop anti-gravity and things like that. Now, there's no actual evidence he was interested in that particular subject. But I do think some of these people on this list, not all of them will be prosecuted, or not certainly not all of them will be sued rather than prosecuted. I do hope they'll get prosecuted. The ones who deserve it will get prosecuted. But for example, there's all of Virginia Roberts Jeffrey's doctors are listed. Donald Trump is listed, but only as an as an adjunct. He was actually specifically cited by Joanna Schofield or Schoberg. Joanna Schoberg has specifically said that he's not guilty. It's known that before they fell out, Trump took a couple of lifts, yes, with
hmm.
Epstein's airline, in the same way that we poor people might, say, can I borrow your car today? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
For these posh people, it's an airplane. Give us
Yeah.
a lift,
Well,
yeah.
let's face it. Though,
Things like
I
that.
mean, I would have thought Stephen Hawking's would have been sort of pretty well numb from the neck downwards. I don't think he could have got involved in anything raunchy in many ways.
Well, apparently he did have relationships. I mean, he had relationships. He had a wife and he had
Hmm.
a girlfriend. I don't know exactly. I mean, his autonomic nervous system wasn't affected by this. His motor nervous system was.
Ah.
So he
ah,
so he
Who?
he had a he. I think he had like relationships and things. But I don't actually believe that he was. I think he may have been, like I said, this may simply have been Epstein's the scientific side of things,
Yeah.
which brought Epstein in.
But let's face it, though, Ben. You or I could be sitting on a train, and one of the worst criminals or something could sit next to us. Someone could take a picture and say, "Oh, look, they're two together." But
Yeah.
no, you're just innocently sitting on a train. You don't know if you're sitting on a train or bus or something, who's sitting next to you, what they are, who they are. There's someone sitting next to you. And as I said the other week, I attract nutcases. So, I've got this like antenna that goes, oh, nutcase, here it is, bip, 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 So this is the thing. I think it's very easy to jump to conclusions.
Yeah, there's a very famous photograph of there's Epstein and Maxwell, and there's Donald Trump and his previous wife Ivana, and there's a photograph of them together. If you look at the photograph, you'll notice they all look rather young in this particular photograph, and that's because this was taken, I think, in 1987. This was before Trump and Epstein fell out. Epstein's actually banned from Mar-a-Lago because of his behaviour, his rather antisocial behaviour with some of the members' daughters. So that's why Trump kicked him out, very rightly. However, there are some. I mean, obviously, there's no actual process. The next stage in this lawsuit has not been announced. But I mean, obviously, the context in which some people are mentioned, I think, does incriminate them, and you could get a sense that there's more going on here. Not least because certain people have been accused directly by some of the victims who've actually gone public, such as Joanna Sjoberg and the other one. There's a couple of others who are actually speaking out now, and Virginia herself, VRG herself, who is actually the instigator of this. Now, I should say I'm concerned that VRG, we're just going to watch VRG take another stroll to the bank, which I don't want to see. This happened last time with Andrew. The Metropolitan Police NFA'd Andrew. They said, we're not going to pursue this any further. And at the same time, VRG stopped. She basically dropped her proceedings against him after he paid her about £1.5 million. I don't know how much it was exactly, but this was disappointing because does she really want justice, or does she just want more money?
I don't know, but the way I look on it, though, is that the mass media is a pantomime that's stage managed. And I think that to a certain extent it's stage managed because they can either make or break a person. And I tend to try and look behind the scenes of why are we being distracted from something, things like that. And you notice that you get these major sex scandals when they're trying to distract you away from something else that's going on. For example, this week there's been a lot of friction between North Korea and South Korea. I mean, the bloke who has a weight problem with his terrible trousers. I mean, have you seen those trousers? They're like some out of the 60s, the flares. The big fat geezer, what's his name?
Kim Jong-un, Rocket Man.
He walks around and his I've never seen trousers so bad. I mean, surely he can afford to pay.
Yeah, it's almost as bad as his haircut. It's terrible. I mean, I don't know. There seems to be a connection, I think, between bad hair and political power. I mean, look at Boris Johnson, Donald Trump, and now this guy. It's like, but I mean, this is always something you've got to be on our guard against, because there are always like distractions. I mean, for example, during the news of the world phone hacking scandal, in which they basically had to shut the paper down because they literally hacking the phone of the parents of a girl who had been murdered by a serial killer. They then suddenly it was Kate Middleton's tits. Kate Middleton's tits. They couldn't.
Yeah.
Kate Middleton had been bathing in a swimming pool without a top on, and some paparazzi apparently. This was when she was on holiday with William in Italy, and apparently some paparazzi managed to get into a position where they could take photographs with a telephoto lens of her topless, and this was a massive, big hoo-ha. When, in fact, there was a much worse scandal. This was in 2011, and there was a much worse scandal going on. The scandal eventually did destroy the paper. But this was a last-ditch attempt, I think, to save that newspaper by bringing out the Kate Middleton's tits scandal. And this is always something...
toe sucking, didn't you? Fergie and her toe sucking. Was it her that did the toe sucking?
You see, like, there's always ways of distracting people. I mean, there's... When it comes to distracting people, though, usually I think more mundane methods, more mundane sort of scenarios are envisaged. There's no need to conjure up elaborate stories about sex scandals with scientists on beaches in the Caribbean. Things like some celebrity gossip or a soap opera bombshell usually does the trick. I don't want to sound arrogant here, but normies are not hard to manipulate in that sense. The government employed top psychologists to mess with people's heads, and I knew one of these people. I knew one of these people very well indeed, and she was an extremely abusive and destructive person. So yeah, they know how to mess. They know how to screw us up. They knew how to drive us crazy and know how to make us do what they want.
Oh, they're very, very clever. And I think they've been doing it for years. They perfected it now. And they use the same system over and over and over again,
Yeah,
as it's so good.
it
And
keeps the
I
trick
think
keeps working. They'll keep using it.
well, that's right. I mean, the one that gets me now, I, as I've said many times before, I'm not religious, but I do believe there's an energy that I don't understand. I don't know what the energy is, but it's there. And I do believe in spiritual things and I'm into natural stuff. But what gets me is this spiritual awakening thing. Now, all the time you're seeing people saying, oh, yes, as a spiritual awakening. That was devised by the Secret Service in the 1920s to prevent there being an uprising in this country after the First World War.
The Luchas
Because,
Trust and that, yeah.
yeah, and people don't realise that after the First World War, there's a lot of very discontented military trained men who had been forced to go to war, gone through hell, and then promised a land fit for heroes of milk and honey, and came back to worse poverty than when they left. So they were getting pretty irate about it. And this idea of, oh, there's going to be a spiritual awakening. So we'll just sit back and watch as people become. It was so successful. That's how the CIA devised the hippie movement in the early 60s, because of the spiritual awakening. Oh, hippies, yes. Because remember, in the 60s, America was a powder keg. Literally, it was a powder keg ready to go any moment. And they diffused it with all that peace and love. And I'm all for peace and love. Yeah, I'm all for that. But the hippie movement,
It's got to be the real thing.
Yeah.
When it comes to peace and love, it's got to be the real thing. But it's true. I mean, even like these heroes of the hippie movement, like what's the name of the LSD? The guy who was always going on about turn on, tune in, drop out. What's his name?
Oh, I know the bloke, but I can't think of his
I'm
name.
having a Joe Biden moment. I can't think of his name. Someone will post
Yeah,
it in chat.
Timothy
Leary. Timothy Leary.
Yeah.
He was involved with MK Ultra, and indeed, this is proven. I mean, you can get it on YouTube. In 1979, they had a reunion, the whole MK Ultra thing. You know, the Jolly on Reese and all these other people who got together, and they all got together and had like a party, and it was filmed. Someone had a camera and it was filmed. Timothy Leary is there. Timothy Leary was involved in MK Ultra, which was a massive mind control operation, many multifaceted mind control operation, which supposedly was shut down in 1969, but I believe it continued. I believe
it's just evolved, didn't it, into something else?
Yeah, like a lot of these subjects, it just goes onto the black budget.
Yeah,
it just goes into the black budget.
But did you ever see, talking about MK Ultra, did you ever see who's that girl? Britney Spears.
Yes, the
singer.
Interviewed.
Yeah, the singer. I mean, she's being interviewed, and the interviewer must have inadvertently said a trigger word, and immediately she changed her personality, went said a load of gobbledygook, and then got back to where she was again.
That's really creepy.
That really is creepy.
Yes, a guy who talks a lot about this is Mark Devlin. He's got a very, very good attitude. Yes. He knows a lot about this. Yeah, Britney Spears is clearly, it's almost like someone did actually say something to put her in an altered state of personality. And she's not the only one. Another is Nicki Minaj. Now, Nicki Minaj has done interviews. It seems like her own personality, her own alters, the gaps between her alters and her ability to switch to one to the other is very thin. I mean, she will literally start talking into a different voice, and one of them is she even gives them names. There's this Roman Zelensky character inside her, who's a 10-year-old boy from South London, and she speaks with the kind of accent, the actual accent. And there's Roman Zelensky's mother who has like a posh English accent. And things. I mean, and there's Lady Gaga who's her video work is really, really outrageously occult. And some of her videos, she even has this altered state she calls Mother Monster. And people think they're just joking or they're being artistic, but maybe what if they're actually literally are mind controlled personalities? And these people, these famous people, maybe you can't get famous in the music industry unless you have been mind controlled.
It seems like that, because when you see Lady Gaga, you heard of the subliminal strip where they show you a flash of something on the screen that your conscious doesn't see, but your subconscious does.
Yes.
So if they want to sell hamburgers or something, they'll flash a picture of a hamburger up, and you'll find even vegetarians queuing up for a hamburger, thinking, "What am I doing standing here for?" And it works on the subconscious.
It's been proven to work, and we know this because there was an experiment done in 1959 with the release of the film Ben-Hur, which is a great movie. It's a really good movie.
Yes.
But they actually had a control group of some of the reels. Some of the reels had flash frames put in of pictures of Coke bottles. Just every so often there'd be a flash frame. Now, as you said, if you watch that film, you won't see it. You won't know whether you're watching the film with the flash frames in, or just part of the control, or if you're part of the control group. You won't know, even if someone tells you to look out for it. You can't see it because of the cine effect on your brain. But your subconscious sees it, and indeed, sales of Coke were higher in the cinemas that had the flash frames in, as opposed to the control group. That was back in '59. I mean, they knew long ago that how to do this, and it dates back even further to Edward Albanese.
Yes.
And the things he did. This is Freud's nephew. I mean, women didn't smoke before about 1920. You know that? Any woman who smoked before about 1920 would be accused of probably being a lesbian or something. It was considered, but then he got during a Mardi Gras festival. He had these women on the floats, sponsored by Benson and Hedges and Lucky Strike, and they get their fags out and start smoking, and it became then an overnight sensation. And honestly, there is actually a very good Arabian proverb, a very old, wise Arabian proverb that says, if it ever became fashionable to make biscuits out of camel dung, most people would eat them.
Correct.
And it's true. If you can make something fashionable, you can make people do anything.
Look at torn jeans. That's always what gets me. Jeans that generations ago people would throw out or repair. It's now fashionable to wear jeans that are worn out.
Oh, it's just, I mean, literally, if there's people who have businesses and things like that who want to market a product, they don't go to advertising executives now. They go to psychologists and they say, look, how can you arrange something just to make people keen on this particular product? I mean, it's that I can't recommend more Adam Curtis's Century of the Self.
That's interesting.
One. And even better, The Trap, which is a 3-part documentary.
Really? Because in the 70s there was a thing called pet rock, and there was as the story goes, and I don't know how true it is, a sales executive said that he could sell anything, and someone said, "See that pile of rocks over there, but you can't sell them." And he said, "Yeah, I bet I can." And what he did, he actually advertised these rocks as pets, and people had little mink coats with a rock on it. And there's an American woman saying, "Oh, it's marvelous. If someone breaks into my house, pet rock just gets into my hand and is hurled at the assailant, and I feel really safe with pet rock with me." And and they think they're going ding dong today. That was in the 70s, and they had pet rock, and then they had pet tire, and kids having old tires from the dump going along with us. "Oh, it's my pet tire."
Yeah, it's shocking. I mean, obviously, this is a comparatively benign use of this kind of manipulation, but it could be used for something much more serious. It could be used, for example, it has been used to make people. I mean, I will be careful what I say here. In the last couple of years, a couple of years ago, it was used to make people agree to a certain medical intervention. Yes.
Yes.
A certain medical intervention which they may otherwise not have had. For example, they had people like famous musical artists like the Proclaimers and Dolly Parton wrote songs about how wonderful it was, and the Kaiser Chiefs and people like that. They were all promoting this medical intervention, and I mean, luckily a lot of people did see through it. I know that there's at least 3 million people in this country who never came forward for it, despite all the pressure that's put on us. All this so-called
3 million on one, me as well.
All this so-called encouragement. This encouragement actually just simply means coercion, bullying.
But actually, what got me, Ben, I don't know whether you found this. There's a big supermarket, sort of like out of town supermarket I go to, and it's a biggie. It's like a mega market, and I was the only one walking around without a diaper over my face. The only one. Nobody else. Everybody else was all, and no, I felt quite empowered by it, but I got fed up with being accosted. I mean, admittedly, they were polite by security people. So, excuse me, sir, we've got on all this sort of stuff. But it shocked me that I was the only one. Nobody else.
Yeah, I mean, I still see people wearing them even today, and you don't have to. It's quite shocking. But I mean, I just yeah, the local grocers actually stopped us going in unless we were wearing one. And I mean, seeing as what I did was though, I made my own. It had like a subversive message on it or something. There was COVID 1984. And don't believe the government, things like that. And I had like infowars.com and davidike.com and things like that on the front of it. And look, I was hoping someone would say, you can't go in wearing that. And then my reply would be, but you told me I had to put one of these on. Yeah, but you can't have it with that on. I said, look, at that point I would have just said, look, if I don't buy food, I'm going to starve. So either I wear this, or you can explain to your boss why I'm starving. Things like that.
But they're not allowed to do it because it was against the law actually to not to stop you, because I was in the bank at one time and there's a big queue there, and this woman, everyone's queuing for the machines because all the tills are shut down, and this woman came across to the bank with this box of masks and that, and she said, "Here, sir, how's your mask?" I said, "No, thank you." And she said, "But you've got to wear one." I said, "Yeah, I'm exempt."
Yeah,
and then she started to go into it, and then I got out of my pocket this piece of paper that said that they can get a £9,000 fine if they discriminate against people. And she just glanced at it and walked away and left me alone.
There's all kinds of ways you can resist. I mean, there's no reason why you should comply. You can resist in lots of different ways. And yeah, that's good. That's a good thing. No one has to do this. I mean, the government lied and said some things were obligatory when they're not, and they talked about so many things that they really lost their minds. I mean, this is why I got the impression that they were literally being given orders from higher up to do certain things.
Oh, I'm positive though,
Yeah.
because what got me is that now that bloke, I can't remember his name. He was on I'm a Celebrity thingy Bob.
Nigel Farage?
No, the other chap who
Hancock, Matt Hancock.
And he said, "Oh no," he said, "this was only guidance. This wasn't law." And I said, "Well, hang on a minute, there's people being arrested." He said, "Yeah, no, but it was only guidance. The legal people got it wrong. It was only guidance."
There was never one single successful prosecution for people not wearing masks. Never, not one person. I mean, some people were issued with fixed penalty notices, and they, none of them. I mean, certainly if I never got one. If I had been, I'd refuse to pay it, and I know most people refuse to pay it, and no one's ever been dragged into court. It's like the TV license. No one really. You're not going to be punished in any way if you do that.
But I'll tell you what got me though. I was in Lidl's. The bloke said, "Can you stand back, please, sir?" So I acted deaf. I said, "Pardon?" I went straight to. He said, "Can you stand back?" I said, "Sorry, I can't quite hear you. Can you?" And I was getting more closer to him. And he's actually terrified. I said, "Sorry, you okay?" I said, I don't smell. I said, I smell a BO or something. And he was getting all sort of. But that's the best thing. It's fake deafness. "Pardon? Sorry, I can't hear you. Can you come a bit closer? Can you speak up, please?" And I think it was little dictators were jumping out all over the place. And I was going to go into a shop and it said no mask, no entry. So I walked in and went, turned around, just walked off. Thought, right. And it was these small retailers that were worse than the big ones, I found. And the small independent shops, there was a butcher's shop that had signs everywhere. Must stand outside, and then you got to come in one at a time, and all this, that, and the other. He went bust. No one to go there.
Yeah, it's good. Well, it's horrible that so many businesses were destroyed, and then we're still paying the price for that. And what's also very sad about this is it's not just like the security guards and the police. It was like your next door neighbor. It's like in East Germany. You got to be aware of your next door neighbor. They might denounce you to the Stasi. In this case, lots of ordinary people fell into this trap, including, I think, a few people who should have known better. People on our side of the debate, people in the UFO world in particular, really disappointed me. They didn't see beyond their own subject. But I mean, there's a video of a crazy woman on a plane, not the one who says, "I'm telling you, he's not real. You can stay on this plane." No, not her. It's another one. This is what the plane. This was earlier than that. And there was this plane flying. This plane was actually in flight. You could hear engine noise in the background. and she's like standing in the aisle yelling at this woman, another woman in her seat, saying, "You put your mask on! Put your mask on! I'm not going to sit next to you and you put your mask on. You took your mask off." And she says, "I'm eating my dinner."
Oh,
Says,
I've seen that one.
care.
Yes.
I don't care. You put your mask back on now. She said, "I don't want to put my mask back on." And then the cabin crew are getting ready to like to jump this woman, because they will actually, don't underestimate the trolley dollies. I mean, they're trained security and health and safety experts, and they will handcuff you to your seat. I mean, pilots will even carry out emergency landings because of unruly passengers.
Yes.
But this bird was crazy, like yelling at the top of her voice, like this lady next to her had done something. All this lady had done is she hadn't put her mask back on when she finished her dinner. And this woman was talking like she had the plague and she was going to die of the plague because this woman was sitting next to her. It's like, for goodness, it was, you know, it's very there's a lot of revelations about human nature we've seen in the last couple of years, and it's been,
we have. Like the First World War. But look at the First World War. They were inviting young men to go and get maimed and killed, and they're falling over each other to go and volunteer. They had pals where they had whole factories, people enlisting together. And even after 1916, when they were running out of cannon fodder, they actually introduced conscription. You still had a high volunteer rate. And people don't realise that for the first 2 years of the First World War, it was a volunteer army for the first 2 years. And the thing is that people were really falling over themselves. And I won't go into it because I actually had one of my shows taken down because I mentioned about a percentage of people that will go along with things, percentage that believe everything, and a percentage that don't. But I won't go in there because, as I say, YouTube took that show down. I don't know why. So I can't really go into that area. But there is shall we say, there's scientific studies into this that shows a sort of, I call it the wolf pack. And I've noticed with the truth movement, the same techniques are being used. They don't even have to infiltrate now. They don't have to.
I should point out they don't.
No, they don't infiltrate. What they do is they have controlled opposition that gives you some truth, but it's all doom and gloom, doom and gloom, doom and gloom constantly. And then it's to get people tensed up, stressed out, and with no, shall we say, inclination that things are going to get better. It's just mass depression, and that is the plan. That's what they do. That is part of it.
Yeah, I mean, you've raised two separate points here, and the first one about this conscription is interesting because this is actually not known about very often. I mean, I was quite surprised out when I found out that how late conscription was actually introduced in World War One. I know that, and I think the reason is you simply don't need conscription really, because I mean, well, firstly, when the Great War began in 1914. We Brits really hadn't experienced a major domestic war, or one which actually affected us directly in a neighbouring country. We hadn't for over a century. The last one was basically the Napoleonic Wars, which was over 100 years earlier, and no one alive remembered that at the time. And secondly, like you said, there was various types of propaganda, negative and positive, to get people to sign up. One of them was Lord Kitchener. You know, your country needs you, and it was considered there was. The old lie, as Wilfred Owen called it, you know, dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. And they portrayed it in such a romantic way. It's sweet and fitting to die for your country. And then it was only after a couple of years when the body bags started, the body bags and the body parts kept coming back, and the people with birds all over them, you know, things like that. And then, of course, they did start, the reality began to set in, you know. We are, you know, we have, was it Blackadder? Blackadder said, we used to fight imperial wars where the enemy used to have sharpened pieces of fruit, and suddenly millions of heavily armed Germans come into view. And so then they brought out the white feather. Now that is, I mean, there's a
white feather campaign, yes, horrendous.
Seneca once said that a man will face an army before the scorn of his peers. And one of the worst one of the worst ways you can scorn a young man is to say, well, look, you're not going to get a girlfriend because women don't like you. That women hold you in contempt. There's not so few men really had the willpower to resist when the white feather started coming out. They really knew how to hit us where it hurts. They really did.
Oh, and also people don't realise officially World War One started in 1914. Unofficially, it started 20 years prior in the press, because any nasty thing that happened, it was due to Germans.
Oh, the propaganda was extraordinary. I mean,
Yeah.
What's really scary is it echoes what you see in today's papers. I mean, the butchers of Liège. I mean, now this is extraordinary. Or what happened during the July crisis when the Germans actually invaded Belgium is that the daily, papers such as the Daily Mail and the Daily
Yes.
Herald, which is today the Daily Herald is today called the Sun. They were putting out news stories that when the Kaiser's army moved into Liège, they took newborn babies from the mother's arms and impaled them on their bayonets, and then
That's
they
it.
paraded through the streets with the babies on the tops of their rifles and blood dripping down the weapon. And indeed, it went to the point where they were like drinking the blood and things like this. This filled the country with such incredible hatred, burning. Imagine Michael Shrimpton on Speed. I mean, such hatred and burning resentment towards Germans that when the British Expeditionary Force headed over to the coast, to the coast of Flanders, people were just aching to go along. And it was only after that it turned out that the story of the Butchers of Liège was a total fabrication. It didn't.
That's right.
It was made up, but then, of course, many years later, in fact, over 80 years later, when there was an attempt to get public opinion behind the liberation of Kuwait in 1991, we had a young lady speaking very tearfully about how she'd witnessed Iraqi soldiers murdering babies in exactly it was she pulled
incubators,
babies from the incubators.
Yeah.
It turned that young lady was actually the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador, who happened to be a drama student.
I remember that. Yeah.
But by the time everyone realised that, the highway of death had already happened. I mean, the highway of death, which is basically where, according to the Geneva Convention, you don't attack an army in rearguard like that. I mean, They were basically. I can't remember the details of the law, but basically the army was retreating, and it was over the border and stuff like that. But then they were still completely obliterated by the Americans, and a lot of the soldiers who carried out on that attack on that massacre of the Israeli army said, "They're baby killers. They're baby killers. We've seen it on TV. We've seen it on TV. Of course, we were angry with them. We hated them for what they did to the babies."
But did you see that? But I tell you what, sorry, I don't mean to cut in there, but
carry on.
What upset me, and it showed me, was they showed you these really gruesome pictures of people, poor souls that have been burnt to death.
Yeah.
And there was one that had toys and that, obviously, for his children.
Yeah.
Taken back to Iraq, and that choked me up. And there were just family, men, boys, whatever.
Yeah.
Because for every one death, there is a grieving mother, wife, relatives, and things like that. And when you hear the trauma that those people go through, this is why when a war is over, it isn't really over. It's officially over, but then the trail of misery continues long after. And
yeah, I mean, we saw this.
Yeah.
And we saw this. It was very obvious in Iraq, for example. For the start, I mean, most of Saddam's army were not. I mean, were more. They were more like the Americans who were sent to Vietnam. Most of them, they were much younger than the Americans and British soldiers. They were mostly like teenagers. A lot of them were conscripts. There were very, very few were part of the professional corps, the Republican Guard, etc. Most of them were like you say, they were just little kids who'd been conscripted. And then, what's really galling is at that point, they could the objective, if they really hated Saddam that much, why didn't they all they needed was the petrol money to get to Baghdad, and they could have invaded Iraq and got rid of Saddam then. But they didn't. They didn't get rid of Saddam after 1991. They left him in power, and Saddam, of course, regrouped. He had he bought new weapons, and he carried out horrible retaliatory strikes against the Marsh Arabs, against the Kurds. There was a genocide in Iraq following 1991. It was one of the worst. It's one of the darkest periods of that country's history. But why? And it was why couldn't they just got rid of Saddam in 91 if he was just such an evil guy? But they wanted him because he was useful. He was still useful in 91. He was still useful as long as he got out of Kuwait. He was still useful to the globalists. This is why they left him in power.
But they reckon he was invited him, didn't they? They reckon the Americans invited him into Kuwait. There was something weird about that. Because I know that Ian R. Crane, the late Ian R. Crane, you know that with the birds that they opened the oil into the Gulf.
Yes.
And they've killed a lot of birds and that. Well, Ian R. Crane witnessed that the Americans did it.
Yeah.
Not the Iraqis. It was the American service. And he opened his mouth and he got threatened to keep his mouth closed.
Yeah. He said that. He said because he saw that the Iraqi soldiers guarding the oil fields had been killed by American special forces, and then the Americans had then, yes, right, they set the fires off and they spilled the oil, the scorched earth thing, yeah. And I mean, this should really be a wake up call for us all, not to believe the hype. They portray people as you see people being portrayed as monsters in the media. And very often they're only portrayed as monsters because they want to manipulate public opinion to do something. These are often monsters that a few years earlier they were doing deals with. Saddam was like favored by the globalists, all through from the 70s when he took power. He was their number one son. I mean, they sold him weapons. There's pictures of him shaking Donald Rumsfeld's hand.
Oh yes, I've seen that.
He was a guest of the Queen. I mean, and then suddenly in 1991, he just appears, and people think, well, that's in 1991. That was when most people first heard about the guy, and you hear about what a horrible man he is because they wanted to get him out of Kuwait. Once he was out of Kuwait, he was useful again. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. His human rights abuses were irrelevant. They don't care about human rights abuses. They support oppressive regimes. The globalists, they will support any oppressive regime that is useful to them. And you only hear about it in the news when they're no longer useful. Then you hear about how horrible they are. So,
well, this is it.
I mean,
there was an actor called Rod Steiger. He's dead now, and he was in the American Navy during World War II. And he said that we hear about the terrible things that the Japanese army did. Yes, they did do terrible things. But he said he saw innocent civilians being shot up by the Americans in ships, and they were surrendering, and the Americans just ignored it and carried on shooting. And there was men, women, and children, civilians. And he said he was sick to the stomach watching it, and he witnessed it. And that was Rod Steiger. He was, I think he was in was it the Tattooed Man or something? He's in a lot of very interesting films.
Yeah, he's a famous actor.
Yeah, famous actor. But he actually witnessed that happening.
Yeah.
And you only hear, shall we say, history is written by the victors. You only hear one side of the story, never both sides of the story. Exactly. And most of the time, we're just lied to and lied to and lied to all the time. It's just constant lies. Anyway, shall we have a quick dip into chat for a while? Do you fancy that?
Yeah, but I'd love to. We never got onto what you said about the controlled opposition, the truth movement. We can come on to that as well. But
well, we're going to come on to that. Should we come to that a bit, because we generally have a little dip into chat and then have a whiz around. So let's have a look.
Well, DJ B2 said, Ian, you sorry, you go ahead, mate.
Where are you?
Sorry, well, DJ B2. So I must have met DJ B2 or seen him because I was at the old police station. Was that 2008, DJ B2? Because I saw Ian there. Yeah, Ian was a speaker at the old police station in Liverpool. That was what was it called? Not Alternative View, but there were two conferences in Liverpool. And that was the first one in 2008. Yeah, very good.
Well, we've got here, was it? That was it. Here it is. I saw it, but GJB2. I saw Ian R. Crane in the old police station. Yes, right. Yeah, that's it. And I saw him in a place called Harlow. Do you know? Heard of Harlow?
Harlow, yeah.
It's a gateway to the east. It's a very romantic place. Happens to be the drug capital of Essex, I think, or South East. Yes, and
he went everywhere, didn't he? He went all over the place, Ian.
That's right. But when you leave Harlow, a piece of Harlow remains with you, and it's usually on the sole of your shoe. It's been left there by a dog, Right.
He was a great man. He was a great man.
He was. Angela Dempsey says, has anyone seen Fake Nukes Phil BitChute? rubber babies in Gaza. No, but we'll make a note of it and have a shufti at it. That'd be interesting.
Is that like rubber babies? Does that mean like fake dead bodies and things like that? Because they do that too. They
Oh, that's
I
right.
mean, the first casualty of war is the truth. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And we got here, morning all, that's Stig.
Hello, Stig.
Hello, Stig. Oh, you know
Someone
Stig
said
as
something
well.
someone said something about
New
time
Zealand.
wave zero. What was that? Someone mentioned something about time wave zero. I'm afraid I interrupted when you were doing that. But so apologies for the person who said that.
No, it says here, we've got DJB2. AR Crane did some great presentations. Yes.
Yeah.
Blair lied. Iraqis died. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Blair, we know about him, don't we? You know. But
oh yeah.
Now what's this? Now we got here. Right. Keeping questions over the scam is part of the psyop of keeping everyone engrossed and keeping it in people's minds. Have to move on. Yes. Yes. It's always something. It says here, if you see it on TV, so must get emotional right now, or you are a racist. Yes, that's right.
Well, that's the racist thing is it's almost like the white feather. It's almost like that. It's kind of like it's like a sense of public shaming or social shaming that most people find unbearable. Yeah.
Well, I like this one. Love and forgive. That's just nice, isn't it? Love and
That's a good name.
In my opinion, we really need a live debate between the likes of you two, that's very kind, and professionally qualified experts, as both sides present lots of stats, theories, and opinions with seemingly total confidence. Well, we got here. First World War was set up by Cecil Rhodes, Christopher Gardner, long before it started and after he died, I think. Yes.
Yeah, he died in 1901, the same year as Queen Victoria, and I know that because that's when his scholarships were established here at Oxford, and they're still going today. The Rhodes Mandela Trust is still bringing in young people from all over the world and churning out like good political statesmen that will serve the globalist cause.
Well, when you look at, for example, my granddad, I remember him saying, I'm not blaming him, he's a good bloke, good chap, and he said, do you know something, son? And this is when I was about 7 or 8. He said, during the First World War, the Germans were burning bodies up to get the fat out of them, and they needed the lard, they needed the grease and the oil. That was actually made up by the Daily Mail. It never happened. Another one. But he was told that, he read it in the newspaper, so why should he disbelieve it? And there's a lot of things I used to believe that I couldn't read in the newspaper that I no longer believe. And I mean, I used to believe 2 men landed on a moon. No.
Yeah, I'm on that. I'm on your side with that. I've done you may have seen our Apollo Detectives videos that I've done, which Neil Ward directs. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I did one. Was it Houston? We got a problem. I depicted the Apollo land of the dog cock and its leg.
Yeah. DJ Victor puts it well. The Rhodes scholarships produce good little WEF puppets. Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. That's what it's there for. Oxford is a total Illuminati training center. I walk around all the time looking at these young kids walking past me, thinking, I'm going to see those people in Parliament or in the Prime Minister's office of various countries. It's like there's people from Africa and from Australia, and they're all there, and they're going to end up running their countries when they're older. I mean, lots of Australian prime ministers are Rhodes scholars. Lots of African leaders are Rhodes scholars.
Well, that's right. And was it Common Purpose? That's another.
Yeah. Cecil Rhodes, who was mentioned earlier, he specialised. I mean, his whole remit within the New World Order was to do with Africa primarily. Yeah.
Yes. That's the thing.
But the Common Purpose is like, What's Michael?
It will blame the BND. Sorry, I don't quite get that one. BND. Blah, blah, blah,
I think that's a German intelligence agency. If Michael Shrimpton blames them, it's something to do with Germany.
Yeah. And B2, yes, the baby killing light is still the same today. But people still believe the things like, for instance, an example with World War II. I don't want to go too deeply into that because I don't want to get booted off. But the fact of the matter is, because you get all kinds of names, there's a lot of propaganda that people still believe today, which has been proven to be propaganda. Rockefeller feminists. Yes, the Rockefeller. Yes, the Rockefellers. And it was it. Photo feminists pushed the white feather.
Oh right, yeah. Well, that doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, yeah. I mean, I could rant for ages about feminism, how it's all a part of this. It was all created by various people within the psychological warfare network. Even Emmeline Pankhurst, who she was, I think her sister went on to lead the Australian Communist Party.
Really?
Things like
I didn't
that.
know
Yeah,
that.
her sister was founded the Australian Communist Party. Yeah. Oh, Nathan. Hello, Nathan. I know Nathan. Hey, how you doing?
Oh yes, I know. Is it Eon? Comes. It says the whole world were absolutely gagging for a by then, way out of the do flop. They would have preferred us to have a do flop on and off for years, while they pretended to have a yes. I understand. Dan MC, hope you don't mind. I'm not reading that out fully because I want to remain on YouTube. Right,
that's an interesting point. That's an interesting point. Was that we were they kept stringing us along, didn't they? 2 V words and then you're free. Was it just 2 little V words and then you're free? And all was it all the future any future you know what pandemic measures will not apply to you. As long as you have just 2 little just 2 little jabs, and then that's it. You're free. And of course, then some people went along with it and said, "Okay, we'll have the J words." And then, like the Christians sang, "Like fools, we believed every last word they said in Hooverville." And of course, that's exactly what happened. Then people did believe it, and then they said, "No, you got to have your booster. I know you got to have another booster. Just one more booster, and then that's it." And they kept,
But look what happened in World War One. It's just it'll be over before Christmas. And you'll be returning to a land fit for heroes.
2 weeks to flatten the curve.
That's it. That's all it is. Did you know that in the Second World War, people were gulping around, and this is true. They said in 1939 that German bombers will never ever be able to reach London at all. It'd be impossible. We have such a huge defence network that they would just literally fall into the English Channel. That's how brilliant. No bomber would ever get here. And the other one is it will be over before Christmas because we've got such advanced technology. The war just couldn't last that long. So in November 1939, it was September that was started. September the 3rd. They said, "Oh, it'll be over before Christmas."
Yeah, it'll be over. They always promise these things. It'll be over by Christmas. 2 weeks to flatten the curve. The Germans are no threat. And then we have Hitler's promise and things like this. They always try to reassure us to get us to do certain things. I mean, according to other sources, such as this lecture by David Irving, the historian, Winston Churchill was up every day, get in the morning, and he'd walk around Parliament, looking out the window, saying, "Why aren't they attacking? Why aren't they attacking? Why can't the Germans bomb London?" I mean, he had the cabinet war rooms to go into. He'd be perfectly safe down, 30 feet underground, with armored doors. No bomb could reach that. But of course, the ordinary Londoners in the East End had, they had to wear their gas masks, go into their Anderson shelters and things like that, and lose their homes.
Well, he was attacked in the East End. Did you know that? Churchill. He was chased. Yes, and I know this. I know this for a fact because he was hated in the East End because we had a lot of East End families moved out from London to where I used to live, and they went to my school. They were real Cockneys, and their parents had been through the war, and they said, "Yeah, my mum chased Churchill out the way with a rolling pin." Apparently, and I've heard this from several sources, and I've actually heard it from those children, that Churchill went to the East End and said, "Oh, we couldn't stand it," and they got eggs thrown at him, and he made a hasty retreat in his car off. And all the other filming of him walking around rubble and stuff and meeting people was all acted. He didn't go there again.
Oh yeah. They can. There's so many lies told about this thing. I mean, on top of what Rod Steiger said. I mean, I actually knew someone who'd he's died now, unfortunately, and I actually got in touch with him for another reason because he had some different information about me. But in 1946, he was actually sent to Germany. He was he joined the army just before D-Day, and he was in Germany in 1946, and he said it was like he couldn't believe the state that it was in. There's hardly a building standing. And there were people like living in basically in tents. And he said that there were so many people have been killed by the firestorming and things like that. He estimated millions of people must have killed, because you could smell dead bodies everywhere. They didn't bury them. They couldn't bury them. They would just dig bones out of rubble when they were rebuilding everything. I mean, sure, the Blitz was a terrible thing for London. I think 60,000 people got killed in the Blitz. But Germany suffered, I think they lost about 4 million or more in their own Blitz, which was done by the US Air Force and RAF.
And also afterwards due to starvation.
Yeah, well, after the war, a lot of the over 400,000 demobilized German troops were put into Eisenhower's camps. Now, they're called camps. They were literally they were put into fields with fences around them.
That's correct, yes.
Like with cows and sheep and things like that. They had no shelter. They had nowhere to shelter. Eventually, they were eating grass in the end, just like the farm animals. And of course, so many of them died. It was unbelievable.
That's
And
right.
and I could tell you loads and loads of other horror stories. There was the Soviet invasion from the east. That was even worse, because they were like, they were raping all the women in Eastern Germany, and this was clearly not done spontaneously. I mean, this was actually policy. Ilya Ehrenberg, the Red Army general, actually ordered it to be done. He said
That's right.
all the women in Germany had to be raped.
I've seen the pictures of some of the bodies that were left, and it's horrendous.
I very much recommend the book and film Hellstorm. These are horrible things by Dennis
Oh,
Wise. Although
yes.
it's something you can only read or watch once, because it's so
Yes.
it's so horrifying.
And also, the film is actually on it used to be on BitChute. I think you can see it on Rumble now. Because
it's certainly banned from YouTube.
He did a certain film that I'm not allowed to say, but if you look up Dennis Wise, not the footballer, the other Dennis Wise, I think Rumble you will find him easier than on BitChute. Very, very interesting. And I think, shall we say, going into the area that we're talking about, Ben, I think we're on the same chapter of the book, but we would have to speak about that on BitChute, not YouTube.
Yeah, there's something you can't say on YouTube.
It's something you just can't go there. Yeah, but
I think we summarize it by saying that, history is not all it's cracked up to be. The way we see history is often distorted. There are angels and demons presented to us, and we very often don't deserve those. Either the angels and demons don't deserve their titles. Let's put it that way.
Well, my father, as people will already know, that he was conscripted into the army in 1939. He went through hell, all 6 years of frontline hell. But what he witnessed was humanity on both sides. And one particular area, which I've mentioned several times before, and I'd love to know whether those men survived the war, was my dad was in the frontline intelligence section, who had the highest casualty rate of the lot. Now, my dad was a reluctant conscript. He was a bit like David Icke before his time. He knew what was going on. So he knew at the beginning of the war we were not being told the truth, but he had no option in the matter. He was a conscript. And he got into the frontline intelligence because they'd had so many wiped out. And I'm not talking about, let's talk about intelligence. People think, oh, it's exclusive families in desk jobs in Whitehall. No, frontline intelligence is completely different. My dad was a lowest rank. That's right. And the fact is, my dad was pretty intelligent, so they got people who were pretty bright, and they said, right, okay, you intelligence section. And so he got into the intelligence section. I think he volunteered for it because he realised that he was not going to survive very long, on the front line. And he was and he didn't realise you have to go beyond the front line. And there was a terrible battle after D-Day, and some German stretcher bearers wandered into their lines. And a lot of the intelligence could speak fluent German. They'd studied in Germany. There were some Austrians amongst them as well. And the Germans said, we are non-combatant. We're here to save lives. And they've realised that our stretcher bearers have been killed. There's a shortage of stretcher bearers. And he said, we will go out and collect the wounded and come back to your lines. Now, they could have wandered back to their own lines, but they didn't. And for 48 hours non-stop, they went out collecting the wounded. And many British servicemen owe their lives to those very brave German stretcher bearers. And in the end, they had to be ordered to stop because it was against the Geneva Convention. And they had to be taken back to the what they call the cage, which was the POW camp. And most of the blokes were choked when those fellas left. And there were other areas of bravery where men would risk their lives to save a wounded of the opposite side. And the Germans seem to do it more than the British, strangely enough. And my dad witnessed this several times. But we tried to get a request on Classic FM for these two terrestrial bearers, and Classic FM just completely ignored it. Didn't want to know.
I bet, yeah.
And the thing, I even went to a German newspaper to try and find out whether they could locate these men. They didn't want to know. Well, they did. They took the story, but they didn't print it. So it's sad. But if I only hope, I mean, they wouldn't be alive now. It's very doubtful they'd be over 100. But I just hope they survived the war and had a happy life, those two chaps.
I hope so.
There's no monuments to them.
Of course
There's
not.
no gongs. They are incredibly brave men, humane. And that's it.
It gives me hope. It's like the stories of the Christmas truce, 1914. It gives me hope with stories like that, because it just shows with everything the deep state throws at us, with the mind controllers and these despicable people. Like I say, I know personally very, very well one of these people. These despicable, nasty, deceptive, hateful people, and what they want to do to us, despite everything they throw at us and all their power, they can't completely just suppress our humanity. And in certain situations it will come up, the courage, the compassion that we are in, it exists innately within us and could be set free and will be set free at some point in the future. It's there. It hasn't gone away. And that more than anything else makes me hopeful for the future, Chris. It really does.
Well, it does, mate, because I think that is the chink in the psychopath's armor, is they don't understand humanity, and they always go too far. I mean, you look at Chairman Mao, what he got away with. But I think what's happened in China is they've evolved into something else, another type of dictatorship. And when you look at, we've got, shall we say, by the way, did you know that we've got an embassy in Siam? Fockham Embassy, yes, Siam, and he calls it Siam.
This is Thailand, yeah. Is it still called Siam now? Because they're changing the names of lots of countries and cities, I've noticed.
Well, no, because remember, he's a member of the Fockham Embassy.
I see.
He's a Brit, you see. So we call it Siam. So, the rest of Britain calls it, another name, but we call it Siam. And, he was sort of mentioning that, how the Eastern people, Far East people, actually obey. They're very, very passive people, and they will obey and do what they're told. And even now, there's loads of them walking around with masks on, and that majority are. And he said, and when you look at the Chinese, how incredibly intelligent, and they were the most advanced civilization years ago. How did someone like Mao get in with he only had support of about, I think it's less than 5%. And the Bolsheviks got in with less than 7% support. I mean, it makes you think. And I think that when you look at what Mao got up to, and remember, they were all financed by the West.
Yeah. It doesn't surprise me at all. I know the Bolsheviks were. The Bolsheviks. It was obviously that was their plan for Russia. And this is probably their plan for China. I mean, of course, it led to the Great Leap Forward, which is which is the most inappropriate name you can imagine for the death of 100 million people. But they would, there's silly things like they were planting seeds, and the birds would come and eat the seeds, so they go out and kill all the birds. And then the insect predator would be gone, so the farmland would be covered in insects. And in winter, they said, "Oh, don't worry about the winter. We can grow crops in winter as well." But they said, "Well, the ground freezes. We'll get frost. Doesn't matter. Just light some fires, and that'll get rid of the frost." As those little bonfires all over the fields. And of course, it did. It caused a little warm spot around the fire, but it did absolutely nothing to get rid of the frost. And 100 million people, all traditional farming methods were completely abandoned. And
that's right.
And we're seeing this again. We're seeing this again with them.
That's right. Intelligent. What it was is it's thick academics, totally impractical people telling practical people what to do.
Yeah. So what you do is you get traditional farming methods that have lasted for centuries or millennia are completely thrown aside and replaced with something else. They think this is going to give us more food. It's going to end in famine. And this is going to happen in South Africa because where the government are currently seizing the farmland off the white people. This is the white people who created a breadbasket in southern Africa, which exports food. It has a massive surplus that it exports as well as feeding its own people. You're going to have a country. How many people? What's the population of South Africa? I think
I
40
don't
million or
know.
something. They're going to be
Yeah.
on death's door if this goes on, because they're
Well,
not
look
going
at
to
what
have
happened.
any food.
Look at Zimbabwe.
Yeah,
That was the bread bowl. That was the food bowl of
yeah.
Africa, and it was just decimated by communism because that's chappie. What was his name now? Ooh,
Robert Mugabe.
Mugabe. He was actually put there by the British. He was
Yes,
a communist.
he was an MI5 agent. Yes, MI5
Yeah.
agent. And
I mean,
of
look what
course,
they did.
I mean, Zimbabwe is South Africa in 20 years' time. You're going to see that there, except it's a much larger population, and there's nowhere for them to go to because a quarter of the population of Zimbabwe left the country. Some and most of them went to South Africa, including nearly all the white people. But
And now they're going to Russia, aren't
a
they?
lot of the
They're
black
actually,
population too.
yeah.
I mean, the whole aerial school thing. The reason it's been so difficult to track down the witnesses is hardly any of them are still in the country. They got out. But
Yeah.
South Africa's going to be like that, except there's nowhere for them to go now. I mean, there's the population.
Well, there's
South
Russia, isn't
Africa
there?
is full of immigrants.
Yeah, but Russia has actually opened the door. They want farmers to go to, I think it's not Siberia, but there's a part of Russia which is very similar because not all of Russia is frozen and icy. It's a huge continent, and right the
Yeah.
way over near the, I think it's a Chinese border. I think it is. I could be wrong. They want farmers because there's lots and lots of barren land there that can be
And
used.
they could husbandize
Yeah,
that. Yeah, and it's that's good because there's a lot of Russia's been badly affected. Well, it was badly affected by the Ukraine intervention. Although Russia's handled it very well. I mean, Putin is as crafty as a fox, and he's handled
oh
it
yeah.
very well.
Do you think he's still alive though? I don't know.
I hope so. I hope so. He's one of the few
I hope.
statesmen on earth I feel any sense of respect for. So I hope so.
Yeah, that's right. I sort of, but around where I live, the local council had the Ukrainian flag flying outside. They did that,
Yeah.
and they had a big border, and at our taxpayers' expense. And now they've got a Ukrainian something centre for refugee centre, which is and I thought the local council there was to not be a political agenda. I thought it was there to provide services like buses, roads, pavements, and and emptying your bins and things like that. But it seems that they're not anymore.
Well,
They're political.
yeah. I mean, the Ukraine flag, I suppose, is slightly better than that horrible rainbow thing that they keep flying out in Oxford. But
Oh, you've got a rainbow one, have you?
they have
Yes.
all the colleges are flying this rainbow thing, which is just it's ridiculous.
Well, for people that think they're a light, think they're a lampshade or something, they want a light bulb covered. That's what Katie Hopkins said, isn't it? I don't mind. I don't mind if you think you're a lampshade. I'll come and plug a light bulb up your arse. I mean,
that's hilarious. She's hilarious.
But when you think about it, we've also had the country that we're not allowed to criticise. We've had that outside. Still got that outside the council as well. The country we're not allowed to criticise is doing rather nasty things. So when you look at it, I think we've got the communist mindset in this country with these like common purpose types that are in power now.
Yeah,
they're actually in power. These totally impractical people, like electric cars that take 40 minutes to recharge, 15-minute cities, which you must be well aware of being in. Oxford.
I'm in the original 15-minute city. Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you something else I found out today. Now, I've got 3 batteries. I know it's a bit sad from my various vehicles that I've got, and because I've got a smart. Keep this between yourself, Ben. Don't tell anybody. Just I've got a smart car. I should be having psychiatric treatment for owning a smart car.
Everyone listening to this, please forget it. Yeah.
Yes, and
all viewers
you phone up for insurance. You say you got a smart car. Have you really, sir? Hey, listen. It's Bert as a geezer here with a smart car. You had a history of mental illness, sir? Oh yeah. Well, anyway, they eat. Well, my one eats batteries. You see.
Oh, yeah.
So local council will only allow you 2 batteries in a year to put on in their dump. And you've got to show everything. You've got to show that you live where you live, name, dress, and everything else like that. So I thought, I know, I'll go to a local scrapyard. So I phoned them up today and I said, yes, we need your passport, driving license. What else was it? Oh, yes, utility bills, this, that, and it. I said, what? I said, you want to get rid of 3 batteries? He said, yeah, we've got to do that now because the police want to know where the batteries come from. I said, well, they come from my car.
Goodness me. That's unbelievable, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. No wonder people are dumping stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so difficult. And now, when you go to the dump, you have to actually show ID, say from a utility bill or something like that, or a driving license or something, before they let you dump something. But you're only allowed 2 batteries a year, and they make note of it. So if you have 3, so I've got 3, what do I do with the other one?
Well, yeah, people fly tip them. I mean, of course, and they catch fire. They're fire risks. I mean, why?
Not the lead acid ones, only the
the lithium ion ones are fire risks. Yeah. I mean, they a lot of the cars catch fire, and there's like those little e-scooters, they catch fire as well. A couple of dissolved into a burning inferno. It's like yeah.
Well, I can't see smart electric cars lasting. They're stupid. They're milk floats. I'm sorry, they're milk floats. I mean, the electric cars are absolutely brilliant for going a couple of miles down the road when it's peeing with rain to pick up your shopping and drive home again. Lovely. Couldn't be better. But to go any more than say 5 miles or 3 miles down the road, forget it. I mean,
but they don't want us. They don't want us having personal transport. They want us all on public transport. They want us because then we can be controlled more easily. And it's all.
I loathe it.
Yeah, it's things. Some people depend on their cars. I mean, I'm lucky. I don't have a car. I know a lot of people need them.
Well, I do. Well, I'm a bit. No, I'll be honest. I'm a bit of a petrol head. I do like cars. I like cars and push bikes, but not motorbikes. Isn't that weird? Something. Perhaps I should have counselling for it. Who like push bikes but don't like motorbikes? And you like cars?
There's something wrong with you.
There is something definitely wrong there. I think I'll ask her. When did you first notice that you dislike motorbikes?
Oh dear! Don't give them ideas. Yeah.
Because we're going to have Krista Gardner on soon. We're going to be having embarrassing gardening problems. You see.
Oh right.
Sort of, I've got a bent marrow. Should I be worried about it? My cucumber isn't. It only gets a laugh, that's all right. Anyway, DJ B2 says World War I was a reset. Yes.
Well, it came just after the Federal Reserve Act and the end of the gold standard. Yeah.
That's
So
right.
it was 1913, and then it was 1914 was the war, and that changed everything. I mean, the whole 20th century would have been different if that hadn't happened. It was very important that war happened for the globalists. Yeah.
And World War II was planned, but not the way it turned out. It was planned, but a certain person with a funny moustache kicked against the globalists.
Yeah, so that's why he was the next. He was the next boogeyman. Yes,
that's right. Urban Fox. Hello, Urban Fox. Don't tell anybody, but we actually recorded a show. When was it? Saturday. And I've got to edit it, and it's it might be okay for YouTube. So watch this space, you see. Though all were where the TV were seen through the windows, and people admitted the offence. Huh? Oh, this is to do with TV licensing.
Oh yeah, the TV licensing. Honestly, I mean, do you know anyone who has one?
Well, I haven't got one because I don't watch telly.
I don't know anyone who's got one. I mean,
they still harass me every 2 years. They send a thing for it.
We used to get like I mean, I live with 2 guys, and we used to, none of us, I think, pay for it. If someone's paying for it, I don't know about it. I'm certainly not contributing. But we got threatening letters for a while, and no one bothered. The landlord wasn't all that bothered because it was our responsibility. And since then they've left us alone, and not heard a word. That was like about 2 years ago.
you know, I mean, I've had about 3 television licensed blokes knocking on my door, and so just to check with all this, that, and the other. And I said, I said I've got a normal functioning brain, so therefore I don't watch any television. I'm not interested, you know. And because they got about as much right to come into your house as an Avon lady. They've got no right at all. Yeah. But Urban Fox says there are a certain amount of successful prosecutions of not paying the license every year and a number of imprisonments, as I found out when I researched the statistics. Yes, that's through gullible people who don't know the law saying, "Oh, come in," or they look through the window and see someone watching the crap that they got on the BBC. But I don't want to. I know this sounds strange, Ben. I can't actually stomach mainstream television.
Well,
the last time I saw it's just vile. It's
well,
horrible.
almost all of it, 99% of it is utter trash, is mental sewage, and the 1% worth watching always ends up online. So I don't have there is a TV in our house which I hardly ever watch. My housemates ask about the house and they watch it most of the time. So what's the point? Yeah.
Now here we got one fan for Matty Handy on his cocks. Needs to be jailed for the rest of his life. The mass murdering. See you next Tuesday. Really? Yes. Well, there's a fan. There's one fan of his. I don't think
he deserves it. He bloody deserves it. A complete twat. He really is.
Yeah, because loads took the. Oh, you mean the Britney Spears to travel, then realised they had misunderstood, and there was no need. That's right. Yes, we call it the Britney Spears. You see,
but then by that time, some of them were getting ill. I mean, they have. A lot of them have become ill, and I mean, I don't know a single person who hasn't had some kind of reaction to it. I mean, even if it's just a period of malaise, some people it's been much more serious. I mean, the film, I can't say the title of the film, but it's a synonym. The synonym is expired without warning, which you'll find on several platforms, not YouTube. But do watch Expired Without Warning, because it's really quite shocking and revealing.
But this is interesting. Chris the Gardener, who doesn't know he's coming on in a couple of weeks' time, we drag him on kicking and screaming, you know. I never once put on a face muzzle. Bear in mind, I worked in social care at the time.
Well done, Chris. Good for you.
Good guy comes on. In fact, you two together, it'd be quite good for us actually one day. Yes. And we got here. What is it? This is an interesting one. DJB2. The 1920s are a parallel for the 2020s. Weimar Republic, etc. Well, you're right, because we're getting like the Weimar Republic. Because the Weimar Republic, anything. I mean, Berlin was absolutely horrendous. And I don't know how far I can go with this. A certain Austrian painter and decorator sent one of his mates in with a surname of G. Sounds like golf balls, and sorted it out, and it became a very decent place to live after that. But people were so desperate that you had women and mothers and daughters as prostitutes. You had absolute every form of vulgarity ever. And what happens when a man whose name sounds like golf balls booted these pornographers and all that lot out? Guess where they went? Hollywood.
Where else? It always goes to Hollywood. Disney lapped them up, I'm sure. But the film Cabaret is actually interesting. It's the musical.
That's right.
Welcome, bienvenue, welcome. It's toned down a bit, but that's a good film that captures the atmosphere of the last days of the Weimar Republic, and it's degeneracy into violence and horrible sort of like hedonism. Which was
yes. And when you look at what they're teaching children now, and to me, they're not letting children have a childhood. And I think it's true what I won't say his name, but a chap said before he was arrested, a German chap. He said our ancestors, our grandparents, would not have stood for it if a teacher started teaching their children what they're being taught now. He said they'd have dragged them out and lynched them. We wouldn't have stood it. That's it.
It's horrible. You know how recent it is. I mean, I'm very glad my daughter is now she's nearly 30 now, so she's out of school. But the things she went through in school, I mean, were nothing compared to what kids do now. I really feel sorry for today's kids. I really do. With the horrible, the self-hatred, the resentment they're taught. I mean, there's I mean, I'm not going to go. I mean, things such as drag queen story hour is it's self-explanatory, but they're taught, like, for example, they're taught racial hatred. For example, they're taught either to hate themselves or hate others, depending on what race they are. White kids are taught to hate themselves, and non-white kids are taught to hate the white kids, and this is causing. I mean, the most vulnerable of our people are children, and this is causing them incredible pain, emotional pain, and also they're being accustomed to things such as CCTV. All the schools have CCTV in them now. There are also some schools are now taking kids' fingerprints. And this is what really started me doing Hapanmo, was when my 10-year-old daughter said to me, "Oh, the school are taking my fingerprints." And I said, no. Then I said, no way are they going to do that. I went there and I told them, absolutely not, never is anyone taking my child's fingerprints.
Good for you, Ben. Good for you.
Thanks. I got into the papers about that as well, and that's when I realised, this whole conspiracy stuff was not just a game; it was serious. And I decided that's when that kind of radicalised me, and I started to Panwo then.
But I feel sorry for kids.
It's terrible. I mean, this, like I said, was the previous generation. I mean, the little 5 and 6-year-olds. What are they facing now when they go to school? There's no way I'd send my kids to a school if they're going to treat them like that. Absolutely no way would I tolerate that.
Well, I knocked myself out on my bike about 3 years ago, and I was out for about a quarter of an hour, 20 minutes. I was out cold, and what happened? I was going along in November, slipped on some leaves, and straight out, you see. And it was some school children that found me, and I can't thank them enough. They were absolutely fantastic, these kids. They phoned for an ambulance, and I said, no, I don't need it, it's okay. I walked home. And the thing is that they really were helpful, these kids. So there are good kids around, and they came from a religious school nearby, and they found me. I mean, I don't know, I think I must have been out for quite a time, because I bashed my head and knocked myself out. But the thing is that and that's another warning: if you to travel by bike, don't go out in autumn, because wet leaves are worse than ice. They're very slippery. And the other thing is that I've noticed children now, there's some on bikes, I stood at the side, and every time I say, thank you, mister, thank you, sir, very polite. So I think there are some really good kids around, and I think it must be bloody tough being a kid now. I wouldn't like to be a child now. I think it must be horrible.
Well, like we said about the wars, about the soldiers' conduct in war, it brings out the best of people. I mean, and the Illuminati cannot destroy it. They cannot destroy our innate humanity, and just with everything they throw at us, it still comes through. It makes me very proud to be human. It really does. And, we're not the farm animals that they want us to be, and they're going to find more and more as the years go by that human side of us, that innate divinity within us, is going to continue. It's going to grow bigger.
And also, humour. Yeah, that's what they're trying to destroy. Humour.
Yeah,
mustn't laugh at that.
No, you can't laugh at anything now.
No. I mean, when you look at the old-fashioned comedians, I mean, my uncles were stand-up comedians, and I remember being in pain with laughter with them. That's how it was. And I was a kid. I actually bent double in pain with laughter. And that's how it should be. That's the sort of pain I like. Pain with laughter. And you look at Bernard Manning. Now, people hated him, but he was a very clever comedian. And I often look at some of his stuff on YouTube, and it's a bit old-fashioned now. It's a bit dated, but crumbs, I'm like, his timing was perfect. I mean, but he knew how to read an audience. And a lot of these clever comedians know how to read an audience, and that's the thing. And I've noticed modern comedians don't know how to read an audience. Very few very good ones.
The only way you can get successful now in comedy is to be politically correct, and political correctness is basically politically correct comedy is kind of like non-stick glue or rungless ladders. It's sort of thing Reginald Herod could sell in his grot shop, and it's bloody awful. I mean. I think Little Britain was the last really funny comedy TV series, and that was because it was politically incorrect. And it made fun of people you can't mock now. But the truth of the matter is, you can make fun of old folk. You can make fun of homosexuals. and because they're funny.
But look at their embracing
and the cross dressers and people like that. You can't. Why shouldn't you make fun of those people? They're funny.
Well, look at Julian Cleary and Les Grayson. Now, I find Julian Cleary funny. I mean, everything he said children could come to his shows, and there's nothing filthy there. It's all double meaning, all innuendo. And he came out and said, "I do like a warm hand on my entrance." Everybody was off their seats. The funniest one he came out with, and it doesn't sound funny. It's the way he said it. He went on, and I admire his guts. He went on one of these charity parachute jumps. You'd never find. I mean, I'm terrified of heights, but and he said to the chap, the film, he said, "Do I go on the front or the back?" He said, "We go on the front." He said, "I think that's best." I was off my feet.
He was good. Yeah, he was good.
I mean, it's not rude, but and that is the secret. It's a bit like
it's suggestive. He was just very suggestive, wasn't he? He was just very
suggestive. That's right.
And I mean, he used a lot of double entendre, and of course, the double entendre is the basis of British humour. I mean, the Carry On films, for example, are loaded with this kind of like seaside postcard sauce. It's completely harmless, but it's what you know.
Carry On Cowboy.
Yeah,
I was trying to explain that to Shannon, who's American. She's lived in Europe, quite some years, but she's in America. I said, "You've got to see Carry On Cowboy because they did the American accents bad deliberately. It's more funny." And as Sid James, he's got this. What is it? One of the bar girls, I can't remember who it was now. Liz somebody. She said, "Can I see your weapon, cowboy?" And she said, he gets his gun. And she says, "That's a big one." And he says, "Yeah, ma'am. In Texas, we've all got big ones." It's all and I mean, it's not filthy. But I don't like. I mean, Billy Connolly used to be funny, but when he F's and blinds, you don't need to F and blind because if you use double entendre, I think it was Max Miller that said, "Never hit the punchline. Let the person's imagination hit the punchline." And I think that is the secret. You know, you think it's rude, but it's not rude. You know.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Carry On. I'm sad. What's sad is like whenever they show these films on TV now, they have they come with like a trigger warning beforehand. It's like, and I saw one the other. I actually watched an Ealing comedy from the early 50s. It was called Needed on Voyage, and I wasn't going to watch it, but as soon as I switched over, they put up this big caption, and then there was this very sober, worried voice came on and said, "This film, the film you're about to see, contains very outdated attitudes to gender and race. Some viewers may find this offensive." And I thought I wasn't going to watch this film, but I'm going to now because I know it's going to be brilliant.
Good.
It was actually. It was about a cruise liner that went around the Mediterranean, and it was brilliant. It was really funny.
Well, they were good. And I'll tell you another one. Do you know the Dam Busters film? I think it's made in 1954. Well, I won't say the name, but I think it's Guy Gibson had a dog whose name began with N. Well, that was then. Now is now. Okay. And in the film, they cut them. So he goes, see the dog come along, says, "Hello." And it goes, and they sort of jump. And then you say, "Oh, it's on." And then it jump again. And you think, well, you know, there's nothing. It's any rude. I mean, what is language? It's sounds and things like that. I mean, I've worked with people from all around the world, and they've told me how to swear in different languages, so I could be quite offensive in different languages. I mean, I know how to say "f off" in several different languages. That's all I know about languages, you know. And they told me that and was laughing their heads off. But the fact of the matter is, you know, you can't. Humans are funny. And losing the ability to laugh at ourselves. I mean, I admire people that can laugh at themselves. I mean, there was a chap who was what did he have now? I think he was in a wheelchair. He had difficulty in walking and used to take the mickey out of his disability. And it sounds weird. It sounds sick, but he was the comedian coming out with it. You know,
it was his own condition. Yeah, it was.
And I wasn't too comfortable with it. I'll be straight there. I wasn't comfortable with it. But he took the mickey out of himself. And a lot of people you look at all the different races that take the mickey out of themselves. I used to like Goodness Gracious Me, the chap who did that, until he started promoting the old.
Oh yeah, that's a shame. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, I mean,
And,
one of the best was I remember I grew up watching him. Actually, was Lenny Henry. He was was a brilliant comedian, and he used to make up he did a lot of sitcoms with sort of imaginary characters, which are kind of like parodies of various types of black people. And this is something a white comedian could never do. Even back then, it would be unacceptable for a white comedian to make these jokes. But I mean, it was. But really, it wouldn't have. The actual content of the humor wouldn't have been different, regardless of whoever was making these jokes. But they were like really, really funny, and
he lost it.
Unfortunately, he's an old guy now. He's reinvented, like Whoopi Goldberg. He used to be funny, and he's not anymore. And he wants to reinvent himself as this kind of woke crusader, which is just ridiculous. It's a very ignoble end to his career, I think.
That's right. He's not funny. I mean, Billy Connolly, I don't find him funny now.
Some of them lose it after a while, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, I've never really fully got into Lenny Henry, although he was pretty good on that Three of a Kind. Was he on Three? I think it was Three of a Kind.
Lenny Henry. He did a couple of stand-up series, and he did a sketch series called The Lenny Henry Show, which is so good. You can get most of them on YouTube, and he did a series of sitcoms with his Delbert Wilkins character. You know, I'm a thoroughbred jockey from the DJ stable, and he had like these. Oh, I can't even think about it without laughing.
But
his mother was so funny.
Do you remember that? Was it? Oh, suits you, sir. That I don't know what, but it's things that you wouldn't think are funny are funny. It's like Dave Allen could say anything, and you'd start laughing. Les Dawson was like that. Oh, hang on,
we had a power cut.
There it comes out. Happens every week. It's a bit late this week, but Les Dawson, some of the things he'd come out with, he was just deadpan all the time.
Dave Allen, I was a big fan of. Yeah, he was a big
Dave Allen's my hero, and George Carlin. Although
George Carlin,
some of the things he said later on were a little bit woke, but he was good, and some of the things he observed, but that they sort of, there's something about Dave Allen. He was a one-off, and especially his and he was it attacked religion. I mean, some of the things religious gangs. But I can still look at him and laugh. I can still look at Dad's Army and laugh. I can still look at these old comedy routines.
Well, these are the ones that are most popular. See, like if there's channels like Dave, which play a lot of the old comedies, and UK Gold, I think, and those are far more popular than anything that comes out now. It's only because the BBC has it just has this subsidy. It's government. It's owned and subsidised by the government. They just get paid at the end of the day, no matter what. So they get away with it. I mean, I think we may, in terms of the commercial TV station, I think we may have passed peak woke, unless they are actually starting to reverse a lot of these policies and a lot of these positions, because they're just fed up with the advertiser, and the advertisers are now knocking on the door and saying, "Hang on a minute, we're supposed to be sponsoring you, and no one's watching our material. We're going to stop unless you get more viewers."
Well, I think the BBC has just, I mean, I think they reached their real height in about 70s and 80s. They were good, used to be good. Now, I wouldn't go anywhere near it. But you see, what gets me with the BBC is, I mean, there was a comedy, was it Miranda? Now, I sat there and I thought I'd lost my sense of humour. And you had this false laughter in the background, and there was and a woman said, "Why are you hiding in those trees and shrubbery?" "Oh, we're looking for lost zoo animals." You get, "We're looking for a giraffe." It's not funny. And it's just and they're saying stuff that's just not funny. I'm thinking, what's going on?
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't watched any of their trash for so long. I can't really judge. I mean, I watch a lot. I watch the critics, people like Dave Cullen, you know, who does a lot of good science fiction reviews. And I mean, I did sort of glimpse at the new Doctor Who, and I had to switch it off. It's appalling. It's one of the worst things I've ever seen. considering I grew up like with Tom Baker and Peter Davidson and these other really, really good doctors, they now have these clowns, these he, she, they clowns just playing these brilliant parts of it. And Russell T Davies, the writer, is totally and utterly unapologetic about it. Whenever you tweet him and say, "I don't like this, it's horrible, it's a travesty," he says, "Tough."
Good.
That's his attitude towards he literally has turned against the classic Doctor Who fans. He wants to bring in new fans, purple haired progressive people, and it's a tragedy. I mean, you just be content with what we have. We got the original series. You can get DVDs of them. You can watch them online. They're everywhere. Just enjoy those.
I mean, was it James Bond? There's probably going to be a transsexual sort of.
Oh, it was going to. There's I forgot the name of the guy they want to bring in. He's I think he's a black guy, gay, I think. Oh dear.
Well, it's got to tick all the boxes. Got to tick all the. See, the thing is, what they're doing is what ideological subversion is all about. What these people don't realise is they're being used for a purpose, and once they've been used for that purpose, then they're swept away and are put against the wall with the rest of us. That's it. Because I think that we're going to talk about the way truth groups, they're not infiltrated. I think they're just being brainwashed. I personally, and this is my own person, I could be totally wrong, but I look at things like GB News as controlled opposition because they got to go along with Ofcom. And I've noticed with controlled opposition, it is doom, gloom, but they don't tell you anything positive that how we're going to get out of this mess. It's just making people depressed and giving them pent-up anger.
Yeah. So this is what's wrong. There's no solutions.
There's no solution. And you notice these protest marches. We've now got people that have got celebrity status that stand up and then they talk about what I was saying earlier. There's going to be a spiritual awakening. Everybody's clapping all like this. And we're going to do it. But they don't give you any positive solutions. Like, for instance, doing away, shall we say, investigating the city, doing away with usury. And that will be the first start. And then we start to arrest the scammers. That's the second thing we're going to do. And then we're going to rearrange the tax system where we don't. And then we're going to do away with, because I don't think we need government because it's civil servants around the country. So we need a lean, mean civil service that are answerable to us, Hello, you're plugging in your tower there. Oh, that's it.
I just poured myself some more drink. Now on the subject of like controlled opposition, I mean, it's like I'm not like a shillhead. I don't accuse everyone of it like some people do.
That's it. That's what they want you to do, though. They want you to say, that's it. They want to create suspicion. That's what they did after the First World War.
I mean, there's certain individuals I know, including people I respect in many other ways. The moment you mention a name, they say, he's an agent. That person's an agent. Dodgy as hell. And very often the evidence they provide is feeble to non-existent. I mean, for example, I often ask these people, I say, well, how do you know this person's an agent? And, their website looks a bit like mine. Things like that. Cat Hollies. We talked about that, Cat Holly. Yeah,
yes, Tavistock gave us flower plan. You might be right. I thought it was the CIA, but
well, they're all connected. I mean, for example,
yes,
I could tell you because I've got a personal experience of this. The Tavistock Institute worked closely with the Stanford Research Organization, the Stanford Research Institute, which is connected totally to the CIA. In fact, there's a whole series of experiments that the CIA and Stanford did working together, definitely. Yeah. But on the subject of GB News, I mean, when they got rid of Calvin Robinson and Lawrence Fox, I thought, what is going on? How could they? And I was horrified by that, totally horrified. And then you have and I thought, what are they going to do? Who are they going to get rid of next? Neil Oliver? Are they going to get rid of Neil Oliver?
Surely not. Is he still on there?
Yeah, he is at the moment. I mean, he's the best thing they've got. He's brilliant, Neil Oliver. I love Neil Oliver. He's a national treasure. And but I bet you that when Ofcom put pressure on them, you have a choice. I mean, you can either like say, well, sod you, Ofcom, and do what Russia Today did and just go on to become like an internet-only station and stick by your guns and be your whole and just be true to your principles. Or you can try and negotiate and appease the system. If you do that, then you go down a rabbit hole in the bottom, and it only leads to your self-destruction. Because once the system has you in a position where they can you can deal with them on their terms, they will then just change the conditions so you become what they want, and it can happen so easily people don't even notice it happening.
You're
really can.
You're right. But by the way, with Russia today, you can actually get them if you've got one of these, what do they call it, VC dooflops, which you can get free of charge off of Opera. VC, what do they call it now?
VPN.
VPN, yeah. You get it free off Opera, and you can actually see it live, Russia Today. But I've found a good search engine, and I found it last night. It's called Presearch, Presearch. So it's Presearch, Presearch. And because I try and avoid Google as much as possible, even though
Presearch, right?
Presearch.
There's all kinds of
I use Yandex. Yandex is Russian. That's pretty good. Yandex.
Oh, cool.
Because the way you sell it is, I can't say the word, but because it's banned, there's a couple of people, one Swedish in America, who operate Creations show, and it's red and it's
yes, Henrik and
yes, Eric. Now, if you put that into Google, it won't come up. You'll find it difficult to find them. If you put it, and I put Presearch on, it was about second one down.
I see.
Wikipedia saying that there was an extreme right wing, the extreme right. You see, and apparently I've been accused of being extreme right, but you see, I live in Hertfordshire, and you're further left than me in Oxfordshire. And I thought people living in Clacton, they're extreme right, wouldn't they be?
The east is right and west is left on our maps, isn't it?
Christopher Gardner, I mean, he's up in Norfolk. I don't know what he'd be. He'd be sort of, I don't know.
Yeah.
Would he be liberal or would he be a far right? No, I think he'd be moderate right because he's not quite right in the United Kingdom, isn't he?
But it's like a slur they always put. It's white supremacist, racist. And they put these slurs on everything. I mean, it's almost like they just pull these names out of a hat and they just put. It's just like mass-produced stickers they just put on everyone. And I mean, I like the Creation show. I listen. I mean, I've been watching them since they started. I mean, they don't. I don't think they cover. I think their scope is not as broad as it should be, but I still like what they do, and I don't agree with them all on everything. But I still think good for them. Why shouldn't people just say whatever they like? And if we've been prevented from getting information, I mean, and why is that? I mean, they become quite candid about it. I mean, they say, well, we want to protect the people from misinformation. But of course, it's obvious that they alone decide what is or is not misinformation.
Let's say safety. You notice every dictator has done things that are evil for people's safety.
Yeah.
You know, you must take your radios into a central place, and we'll take them for your safety.
But they always do that. They always dress it up as something good. Sometimes I think they even convince themselves they're doing good.
Yes, but I like what Hachi said. He said, Trump and the white hats will save us, laugh out loud. Well, I look on Trump, and I've upset a lot of people by saying this, is the second cheek of the same arsehole. So,
all right, well, I don't agree with you on that, but I think that he's a long way from being in a position where he can do any good right now. I mean, he's got a massive mountain to climb before he can get back into the White House. And I think, well, if he can, then we'll find out exactly who he is and whether you or I are correct. But we'll see.
Well, I actually like polite disagreement, which you've done, because I've had my most education from people that disagree with me.
Oh,
I think it's nice to keep an open mind on that. But I think the whole system is rotten. I think to try and change the system from within, it's more like joining the mafia and thinking you can convert them all to Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh yeah, I mean people often say this is one of the arguments against anarchism. They say, well, if there wasn't for the government, then violent criminals would take over. Well, what's the government then if they're not a gang of violent criminals? I mean, they have done more damage, more mayhem, more extortion. They've taken more wealth and destroyed more lives than any gangster ever could. They are by far the worst criminal gang the world has ever seen. And
That's right.
yeah, and they dress up. They call it taxation. Well, if I was just went out and started demanding money from people, as Stefan Molyneux has said many times, if I was just to walk up to anyone and said, right, I'll shoot you if you don't give me some money, or lock you in jail, where you get sexually abused by the other prisoners, that would be called robbery, and you go to jail for that. But the government do it, and we're just gathering taxes. This taxation. Well, we need this to fund the government. Well, how much money does the government actually need? Because the amount of tax we now pay is extraordinary. If you take into account stealth taxes, it can be as high as 51%. So the majority of capital in the economy is forfeit to the state.
Well, we pay more money than a medieval peasant did.
Oh, the Romans used to. It was like 3%. It was like they used to pay. You could work for 1 week and pay tax, and then the rest that would be it. The whole American Revolution was started by the Boston Tea Party, which was a protest against import duty on tea into the American colonies. That was 3% import duty. It'll be 30% today, and no one said a word.
Income tax was introduced temporarily to fund the Napoleonic wars, and that was in the 1812, 13.
It was early 19th century. Yeah.
That's right. And what happened? It was so. It was put in for a couple of years, and it was so disliked that it was voted out, and they did away with it until just after the Crimean War, and then it was reintroduced again. And it's stuck since as an emergency tax. And
but of course,
the taxation. I mean, I did read an article, and I can't remember all of it, about countries. There are a few countries where people pay tax voluntarily. It's quite successful. I don't know how it would work, but it's something that. I mean, there's a transaction tax, which I don't fully understand how that works, but. When you look at all the different stealth taxes, I mean, you think that local councils used to run without paying. You used to go to a local car park, didn't have to pay anything. Toilets were free. You could go into the local council, and you go down to the local water board. I remember when I was a kid, but Dad sent me down to the local water board, and they gave me a load of tap washers that were free. Yeah. Didn't want to know, just, hey, can I have some tap washers, please? Certainly, Sonny. Open your hand. Here we go. And I didn't have to give any ID or anything like that. That was it. And how comes the system worked? People got paid, yet rates and things like that were pennies. They cost very little compared to what people were earning.
But you have to pay for everything now. I mean, I would say, I mean, I've made a video about this. I mean, people who view my channel will know this, but I was at an airport a couple of months ago, and I literally saw a sign at Terminal 3 in Heathrow Airport, and it literally said £5 drop-off charge, which means you can't even you can't even put your car somewhere and stop it, and it just taking up about like 40 square feet of tarmac for just a moment to let people in and out and unload some suitcases from a boot without them charging you £5. And I mean, if they can charge you for that, they can charge you for anything. And it's shocking that we're in this situation and then. When everything goes wrong, they say, no, the government are now here to save you. And you mentioned temporary income tax, temporary. And the number of times we hear this, we have to bring out it's a state of emergency. It's temporary, of course, and we will return to normal. We promise you. We will introduce this temporary state of emergency to deal with this problem, and very often it's a problem they've created deliberately to justify this. It's a fake problem. We will deal with this problem, and then we promise you the power we have taken from the people, we will return to the people. You do trust us, don't you? You voted for us, or some of you did. And of course, there's nothing more permanent than a temporary government policy.
Oh, precisely.
All the legislation was passed at the beginning of the you-know-what. That's still on the book. That's still on the books. It's still on the statute books.
And look what's happened.
They could reintroduce it at a moment's notice. Obviously, they can't use the same excuse because the C-19 thing wouldn't work this time. But they'll think of another excuse. They'll imagine another current thing to scare us.
Well,
They
to
will.
give an example, if you we used to have local council that had building inspectors. They had a building department where you would have the inspector. You had to go through building regs and things like that. That's all privatised now. So what's happening is that because it's privatised, it's there for a profit. All the building control does is make sure that the paperwork is in order. That, you know, and then they'll have a building inspector that goes once and back again, because again that's an overhead. So what's happening is housing developers are doing whoopee, and they're doing the biggest bodge ups you could wish to think of, because they're going to get away with it because they've got no real building inspectors. And then health and safety, if you notice something that everybody can see, then we'll have signs up everywhere. Like someone digs a hole in the road, bloody hell, you'll have all signs everywhere, you know, there's a hole in the road and all this. But if you see something around a corner which nobody can see, they don't want to know, because they're cutting back on the health and safety as well. So it's what's seen and what isn't seen. So I want to ask, because it's not a tax, it's not council tax, it's council contract, because that's what it is a contract. And I've noticed that the chief honcho at the local council where I live is an executive, which means it's a business, and the head honcho of planning is an officer. An officer is a civil servant.
Yeah, of course.
So it's a complete. I mean, the local councils have about as much right to charge council tax as Tesco or Sainsbury's or anybody like that would have to send you a bill each month for food or goods you haven't bought. I mean,
yeah, this is what, when Carla Buckle, a friend of mine, actually refused to pay a council tax and ended up in jail. This is her point, that the whole thing was illegal. And you know what, the corruption is. I mean, you mentioned the corruption, and I've seen this in the NHS, because I was a hospital porter for 23 years, and I saw it degenerate during the period of my career, which was from sort of the end of the 80s up until I was actually sacked in January 2012. I saw horrific abuses of authority and hidden malpractice. So, for example, we brought in a company called Mediclean to run. We were all contracted out to Mediclean. It was awful. We had to reapply for our jobs, and it's a nightmare. And then there was this guy who was a senior porter. Now he was a bit of I thought he was a little bit of a brown nose. He was always into climbing the ladder and stuff like that. He'd kissed a lot of ass to get his position with Mediclean as a senior porter, but then he was actually deputy head for a while. Then he left to join the monitoring team for the trust, and he basically his job was to walk around with a clipboard and just make a note of everything he saw that was wrong. And he thought, that's a money for old rope, that is. You know, it's a bit of a cushy number, and he was looking forward to that. But he became very frustrated with it, because even he had enough of a conscience to realise that he was like making a list of everything that was like unsanitary levels of hygiene. It did get into the news eventually, and horrible things like that. And then he was reporting it to the trust board, and they were doing nothing about it, because the company was basically paying them to look the other way. But it took them 9 years to cancel the contract. How many patients died of post-operative infection and MRSA and things like that in that time?
Well, this is the thing.
Thousands must have died.
I know, but this is what's getting me about things like simple things that we used to take for granted. I mean, the local council now, they're privatising so much in there. I mean, I went to a planning meeting. I've never seen one like it. And I've been to loads of planning meetings, and they just sat there and said, well, it's going to be I can't remember it verbatim, but it was on the lines of, well, it's going to be passed anyway, so we're just going through the motions. It's a planning meeting to decide on people's futures of houses that are around, and we're just going through the motions.
It. It's just there for show.
And you're not allowed to speak. You're actually there. You have to. If you do speak, you're only allowed 2 or 3 minutes, if that. But the councillors can speak for any time. And afterwards, I noticed the building developers and the councillors all patting each other on the back, and presumably are they going down to Masonic Hall or going down to the pub to celebrate?
Yeah, and someone Exactly. Someone said in chat earlier, a lot of the globalists, the function of things like the WEF and the globalists, they often do focus on local government more than national government. So that people like Common Purpose will recruit, rather than recruiting MPs, they will often recruit councillors and mayors and people like that, and they will recruit those kinds of people to operate on a local level, because that is where a lot of their reforms can be made through local government rather than national. And it's a strategy, and they also recruit like chief constables and police commissions and people like that, and police committees.
But did you know that if it shook? I used to live opposite. There used to be a policeman, ex-policeman, that lived opposite where I lived, and he's moved away now. And it shocked him rigid. There was a documentary based upon some papers that were released about 10 years ago about World War II. And did you know that Churchill had a specialist group of saboteurs that were trained, and they were dressed as Home Guard, and they looked like Home Guard, but they weren't. And these characters were specially selected so that if Germany would have invaded this country and taken it over, their life expectancy, it was like a suicide thing, but their first job would have been to take out the local police commissioners, the local police and mayors and people like that who knew too much. So they would kill their own.
Yeah.
And he was shocked at this. And they're absolutely vile people. And they had these underground bunkers, which you can still see, where they as I say, the life expectancy was something like 18 months, the maximum, because they would have been found out. But these blokes were real psychopaths, so they didn't give a job.
These are like stay behind armies and people like that, because they were using World War II, and they were actually active in things like the French resistance in World War II. But also like during the Cold War, they were set up like, have you heard of Operation Gladio?
Yes.
These were, this was like the new nuclear army that was actually formed to counter a potential Soviet invasion of Western Europe, which was pretty infeasible when you consider that the nuclear deterrent. It was pretty. The Soviets never ever planned to invade, have a land invasion of Western Europe because of the nuclear deterrent that both sides had. But what happened was the new nuclear army carried out massive attacks in Italy, horrific terrorist attacks, including the worst terrorist attack before 9/11, which is the Bologna railway station bombing, where I think 180 people were killed in that.
Really?
And they also were, they were, and they were also running the German group, the left-wing group in Germany, the Red Army faction, which carried out bombings, shootings, things like that, kidnappings.
Oh, my word!
They were also known as the Baader-Meinhof gang.
Oh, yes.
And there was Action Directed in France. These various left-wing groups were also a part of this network. And one of them carried out in Belgium, there was a series of extremely violent robberies on banks and shops and things like that, where numerous people would often be shot before. They wouldn't just say, stick them up and empty the till. They'd shoot the person and empty the till themselves, that kind of thing.
That is real. Well, that's real psycho. But the strange thing is, we're told that World War II ended in 1945, but do you know when the last part of the German army actually surrendered?
In Ukraine. I was going to say in Ukraine in 2023, but okay, no. Carry on, Carry on.
No, actually, I think I'm not sure it was in Ukraine, but somewhere. And so a lot of them held out until.
I interrupted you, but sorry. Say what were you going to say?
No, it's okay. And there was a lot of them that were sort of like a guerrilla group that did operate for quite some time after World War II.
Well, I mentioned the guy I spoke to earlier, the guy who'd been in Germany in 1946. He'd been stationed there. He said that he said that there were like Nazi insurgents, and he had to raid. He went on a raid of a safe house once. Yeah,
it's quite surprising. But I know that Hamburg, especially, they had loads of stuff. I spoke to a woman who was a nurse that went there on a sort of like student exchange in the 1950s, late 50s, and she said in Hamburg the amount of disabled people was phenomenal from the bombing.
Yeah,
you hardly saw a person around that was able-bodied. It's just full of disabled people.
people a bit of the injuries and the survivors, and it must be horrible. And the on the subject of the Nazis and their post-war presence, they actually also had a holdout in Antarctica, a place called New Swabia.
Oh yes.
And there were 2 raids on that. One took place in 1946, an American raid called Operation High Jump, and there was another one the following year. In 1947, this is like in the winter, northern winter, southern summer. It's too cold and dark to do anything in the southern winter. But they in 1947, in November 1947, this guy was sent to South Africa for training, and then he was on a ship to Antarctica, and he took part in a raid on a Nazi base in New Swabia. This was like in December 47 to like January, February 48.
Yes, I heard of that, and that was in, I think, I first heard of it in Nexus magazine.
Yeah, he was basically one of these people. Yeah, he was one of these people. He actually got in touch with me because I was talking about this on a forum in the late 90s, and he got into, well, it was actually 2006 I finally met him, but he actually got in touch with me because of that.
It's fascinating because when you sort of realise that what we're told and what we're not told, and it's the little bits that you're not told that help to put the jigsaw puzzle together.
Yeah,
that's what I found, and it's really fascinating. Anyway, we're coming to the end of the show now.
It's been 2 hours. Hey, time flies, doesn't it? It was like that with Kev Baker. I think
I really enjoyed
2 hours. What can I talk about for 2 hours? And once I'm in it, it's just so easy.
And it's nice to see Deb was back in the chat room. I hope she's well. That's it. And that's it. So, as I say, next week we've got a surprise guest coming on as well, and the week after there's a surprise guest coming on, and we are talking about another few surprises we've got up our sleeve, hopefully next week. And it just leaves me to say thank you very much for joining us, Ben. Much appreciated. It's been a fantastic 2 hours. I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Me too. Anytime. If you ever want me back, just let me know, because I really love your show. It's great to talk to you.
Likewise, with your shows. Look, by the way, what is your show? Please give it a plug.
Yeah, sure. If anyone wants to know more about me, it's very simple. HPANWO, Hospital Porters Against the New World Order. And you just put that in, HPANWO, HPANW, you'll find it. Also, if you like this program, you might like my book, Roswell Rising, a Novel of Disclosure, which covers a lot of the topics that Chris and I talk about, but from a fictional alternative history perspective, in which we got the truth instead of the lies. So I think it'll be just up your street. If you like the show, it'll be just up your street. And it's got 2 sequels. It's a trilogy.
Now that's available from
anywhere for any good bookshop for £10, or online. You can buy it online. It hasn't been banned yet.
Buy it online, and you've got a website.
Yes, Hospital Porters Against the New World Order, HPANWO. And there's several websites. Yeah, there's a huge amount of material. Sorry,
is it .com?
.blogspot.com.
.blogspot.com. Excellent. That's it. And so it's funny because we used to get. I don't know. It's the same with you, Ben. But you have a guest on, and then you have another guest on, and just time seems to fly because. It seems it's only a short time ago you was on this show, but it was about a couple of years ago.
We did about 4 or 5, didn't we? I mean, we did like a series of them.
It was good. But I like you. You're pushing. What's his name behind you? What's his name? Tesla.
Yes, that's right. That is Wardenclyffe Tower, which was destroyed in 1917 by J.P. Morgan because he wanted to put a meter on the electricity which Tesla could provide for free.
That's interesting, that is, isn't it? And
I forgot to share this. I'll do it as soon as we're off the air. I'll share it on various places. Yeah.
Smashing. Thank you very much. And if you like, I'll put a link on the down below. Not in my crutch. I mean, sort of on the description. You see, that's where nobody reads it. Nobody seems to read the description. I don't. It's really interesting. It is, So anyway, thanks for joining us. Join the same time, same place next week. That's of course YouTube allowing. And thank you very much. And remember, thumbs up. And whatever happens, have a laugh.
Thanks for watching, everyone.